everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Grace Podcast. It is so wonderful to have you guys joining us from wherever you are watching in the world, whether it is local or international. We are so grateful. And for those who are also listening via audio, we are so grateful. You won't be able then to see who I'm speaking to, but today I have a really wonderful guest with us. His name is Travis, or known to those in Dearly is known as Travis Gale. And he is someone who's actually really involved in the corporate world. He has a passion for developing individuals and teams when they're going through tough situations, wanting to build a healthy culture and wanting to really just dive deeper into relationships and building those relationships between people and their teams in a workplace as well. We as a Grace staff have actually done some trainings with Trav, and that's why I also had it on my heart to chat with him today, because I know that he's going to give you some great insights. So welcome, Trav.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be here.
Very cool. I'm very glad to have you. So for those who watch our Sunday services, you might know that we are in a series at the moment called Into the Deep, and it has been a really great series. We've had 4 weeks. This is a 4-week series, really talking into communities and relationships, talking into making a difference in the world, talking about spiritual rhythms and practices, and most importantly, also being formed into the image of Jesus. And basically where this series came out of is a quote from Rich Velotis, who's an amazing guy. Really like to follow him if you haven't done so already. And I'm going to just read a quote of his. It says, "Spiritual formation is the process of being formed into the image of Jesus through spirit-animated rhythms, practices, and relationships for the glory of God, the blessing of others, and our own flourishing." So Trav and I are just going to be chatting a bit today around that, basically spiritual formations and practices and disciplines. And those might sound like big words. So we're going to try and break it down as much as possible. But Trav, to kick us off, I'd love to just know from you, what does spiritual formation look like to you?
Sure. I think it's an amazing word if you just think about the idea of spiritual formation. And I guess the word that I link to that is probably transformation. And being in the business of human behavior and change, I know how hard it is for us as human beings to transform. So spiritual transformation is really the Holy Spirit enabled ability to transform the way that we think and the way that we behave and the way that we do life. And the beauty about spiritual transformation is that it always points towards good. It points towards a better way of doing things, a way in which to navigate the world, which is set apart from those that are trying to do it through a worldly lens. So I suppose as hard as it is, it's also an immense privilege. And the fact that God enables it and empowers it as well means that, if we lean into him, we can't fail in this. We can really just continue to grow.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And like you said, it's not easy as well. It's a lot of self-discipline, and transformation, I think, is a great word, because that's exactly what it is. Formation and transformation go hand in hand with that. And so, transformation, and like I'd quoted with that Rich Velotis quote, it's basically, we're saying about being formed into the image of Jesus. What does that look like to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think in prep for this, I was thinking a lot about how, Jesus, before he went into his ministry, so before he went in to do the work that he needed to do, he had that period of prayer and fasting. If you remember, it was 40 days in the desert. And I sometimes, I know it's quite a hard picture to present as spiritual formation, but there's something about the tough terrain that we navigate that supports our ability to actually be formed and to be transformed. So nothing transformational happens in an easy space. It's the tough spaces where true transformation happens. I think sometimes we perhaps miss the opportunity because human beings tend to deal with tough terrain in different ways. Some will numb, they'll just numb their emotions and check out, watch series and get involved with all the distractions. Some will blame and fight and resist. But then there are those which are, this is the way that God asks us to deal with it, is to lean in to the tough terrain, to allow it to play a transformative role in how we connect with God and how we do life. And as much as I think we all know, if you read the Bible or you go to church, you'll know being a human being means we will encounter tough terrain. When it happens, it's just quite interesting to see our default response to it isn't exactly how we're almost instructed to navigate it. So to answer your question, spiritual formation for me is about the leaning into the tough times to allow God to do a very deep work. And that's just an exceptionally sacred and significant time.
And that image of Jesus, I mean, Jesus went through difficult times as well. It's not like it was plain sailing for him. For those of us who've maybe read the story of Jesus and know things that happened with him. So it's not like it's a separate thing. It's not like God doesn't know what it's like to go through the difficult times, and being formed into that image of Jesus is through difficult times, difficult terrains, like you're saying.
Yeah. We've got the benefit of hindsight. So you speak to a lot of people who've had difficult scenarios, and when they look back on it, they can see what was happening and perhaps how it was shaping them, but it's never tough in the moment. So I always talk to people about a macro view. Sometimes we're so locked into the macro view of what's going on right now. Yeah. But if we can in those times have the macro view to go, there's a purpose in this. And that idea of not forgetting that whilst you're in it now, if you look back, you've probably been in versions of it. How have those played a role in your ability to deal with this?
Yeah.
And how will this then support your ability to live well in the future? So it's all kind of linked. And as long as God's in that, he's going to be working it, towards something good. So yeah, it's just easy to forget in the moment that we can get through this.
Well, something that's helped me, because I am easy to forget those things myself. I also find that I can be very fickle and forget where God has brought me out of sometimes as well. But being in community, being immersed in relationships with those around you, they help me with that macro view, like you're saying, instead of the micro view. They help me to remember, but God has brought you through this before. He'll bring you through this, kind of a situation. And, part of our series, we're saying about the importance of relationships, the importance of community. It's part of the call of Christian life, What does community look like for you?
Yeah, and especially if you link, if you think about Jewish culture and how they had very, very demarcated times to pause and to reflect, to sell up, and the reflection was always on how God has been at work and how God has brought them. So I think there's something about the power of a community to remind us of what we've been through and how God brought us through that. Totally. Because of what we're talking about here. I mean, there's a bit of a theme here around the ability for us as human beings to connect. So when we think about community, we might think about the social construct, which of course is a big part of our lives. As South Africans, we're very social creatures. But social engagements can also be relatively superficial. And as I've grown older in life, I've realized that for me, community is about the people that I can really connect with, who know my story, and who, when I've forgotten part of my story, are able to bring that up and to remind me, and in turn I can do the same for them. And in a way, what we're doing is we're spurring one another on to that God has called us to run, and then of course there is also the need to be open, to be able to bring other people into community too. But deep community for me is that it's the idea that we've all got the same goal. We want to run this race, but we need each other to be able to do that, and we can't run it alone.
That's exactly it. And do you find that community helps keep us accountable as well? Like, I think being able to be reminded of things, but also going, hey, like, you were wanting to do this and I've noticed you haven't been, of that accountability factor.
Yeah, and it sort of links to one of your other points around rhythm, and you mentioned it in that quote. And it's an intriguing topic, because I think community is probably one of the things that, in my opinion, is under threat. So I'm 42. I've got 2 kids. I've been married for 14 years. My kids are 5 and 9. The pace of life doesn't feel rhythmical. And so what happens is deep community ends up getting quite lost in that space. And when we do end up connecting with people, it's we're quite tired, and we actually keep it a bit surface level so that it can finish and can go. So the practice of community has to become deeply habitual. And if we don't make it ritualistic in many respects, and sometimes we lose the power of what it can bring into our lives.
Totally.
And perhaps we also got to just review how much we fill in our lives with that, in essence, is taking away the space that we need for community. And so it's a real tension, and I empathize with all of us trying to get this right, but people are just so busy, and the one thing that God really needs us to be in is lost.
Yeah. I think, I've heard many times that they say the two things that us as adults say to each other when we ask how someone is, it's tired or busy.
Yeah.
Those are like the two off the cuff answers that anybody gives, because we're constant, and it's so easy to get caught up in that. It's hard then to build the healthy rhythms and practices, because we get caught up in busyness of life and work and family, and we get caught up being tired because we're running so hard, all the time. So spiritual practices can often take a back seat. So absolutely. I don't know if you'd be comfortable maybe sharing with us if there's an area of a spiritual practice that maybe you found a bit challenging as well.
Yeah, so I think in line with that, the one that I deeply resonate with, but also find challenging, is the silence and solitude. When I look at, we look at Jesus as the benchmark of rhythm, you see periods of intensity where he's locked into ministry, he's in demand, there's a lot of people around him, he's leading people, he's having to have these conversations, share parables, etc. And then you see the flip side of that, which is silence and solitude. So as much as we battle with community, I think we also are the ability to be silent and present is also under threat. And so for me, engaging with silence and solitude can be quite difficult because of just what's going on in my mind, my heart. And that's one that I like to pay a lot of attention to. And we also don't have the ability as adults sometimes to break away and do large extended periods of silence and solitude. I think we'd all perhaps stick our hand up for that. But it's how do we get it right in the moment? Like, how do we get it right in the fabric of our day? And how do we have these little intentional moments of silence and solitude? And perhaps in the past, it's been a little bit too much around, we must do our quiet time, and we must read the Bible, and we must, have that half an hour coffee slots. It's not about that. It's about how do we maintain the connection? And if we look at our lives through the lens of connection, a healthy corporate culture is purely determined by the health of the connection between people. The health of your family life is determined by the connection between you and your spouse and your kids, etc. And the health of your friendship circles is also through connection. So if you want a healthy life, connection sits at the core of that.
Yeah.
And at the center of that is the connection with God. So it's, what are the moments that I can create to foster that connection? And that has made it a bit more helpful for me than I must build this into my diary,
That's exactly it. So do you find like it's little moments that you're having to remind yourself in your day? Do you put reminders on your phone, or how did you kind of start that new rhythm then of trying to make those moments of connection?
Yeah, and perhaps it's helpful just to share, and sort of working with people on this a little bit, is one thing that you can do is when do you have a space where you are alone? And one very good example is the car. All of us have to drive from place to place, but it's amazing how even the car now has become very full of activity. I mean, you see most people driving with one hand and checking their phone with the other. It's downright scary. But being able to take that moment, so the 20, 30 minutes or the 10 minutes that you're going to be driving, and actually to just, I know that we need to be focused on the road, but actually just to practice this intentional, I'm not going to look at that, or I'm not going to engage with that. I'm just going to be intentionally present in this, and I'm going to, in this moment, just commune with God. It's grabbing those moments, because I think then what we're doing is we're grabbing the moments that naturally show up during the day, rather than trying to force fit another moment on top of everything else that we need to get done. Now I need to wake up at 4 o'clock to get the half an hour in, but then I'm shattered and now I've got to get the kids to school. So it's just been helpful for me to say, well, here's a moment, it's 10 minutes. I'm going to shut everything down and I'm going to take it. And that's been super helpful for me.
Sure. That's really interesting. I mean, I must say, I'm someone who talks a lot as well. So, and I'm an overthinker. So if I'm trying to spend that half an hour dedicated sitting in my room or sitting in the lounge or sitting somewhere where I'm okay, I need to be praying and reading the Bible right now. And then my mind starts, and I'm like, oh, wait, suddenly that's been 5 minutes and my mind has drifted all over the place. Whereas
Yeah.
I also find the car helps me, and the shower, strangely enough. And those are the two places where I find it easier to try and connect with God, and make those times during the day. And actually, I'm sure you like, I can't remember who I saw it by recently. I think it was Pete Greig, because he does the prayer course, and I really like him. But it was either him or from Practicing the Way, which is a really cool series as well.
Yes.
But they were talking about the fact that if you are getting distracted 10 times while you're trying to spend time with God, whenever that is, driving or sitting in a routine private time, if that works for you, but that's 10 times to consciously come back into a moment with God, which I think is quite cool as well. Trying to
Yes.
learn that discipline of when you are being distracted, to notice it and bring yourself back, and not just to go, well, I'm distracted now, I'll just carry on doing whatever I'm doing,
Yeah. Yeah. I
No, it
suppose there's
resonates.
some, sorry.
No.
No, I just in line with that. It's there's something about the aggregated power of the small moments, or the power of the small aggregated moments. Sometimes I think we go after the one big, this beautiful big quiet time. We're looking for that hour. But if you've had 5 minutes 5 times in the day, there's something more powerful in that as well. This sort of
100%.
this aggregated thing. And it's like someone once said to me, if you think back over the last 2-3 weeks, you might remember one meal that you had that you really enjoyed, but you definitely ate every day and it's kept you healthy. And it doesn't have to be mind-blowing. And I think in line with what you were saying earlier, for those that battle with the practice of presence and the practice of solitude, journaling is just such a powerful mechanism to bring our attention onto a page.
Yeah.
And to allow that journaling to activate the part of our brain, which really just isn't necessarily activated when we're on tech. So there are ways to go about this. A friend of mine struggles to sit and be present. So he literally drives to a location every day and goes for a walk and prays in nature. So we've got to just be creative with this. And rather than feel guilty about not getting it done, work with God on this to build it in. And then found the way,
Yes. Well, I mean, even while you're saying that, I know so many people might not consider themselves a disciplined person. And I know something Craig Rochelle often says is when people say to him, wow, you're so disciplined. And he's like, but it starts with, I've never been one before, but it starts with those little things along the way. And you realize you're disciplined in some area, you might just not be disciplined in the area you're wanting to work on currently, So now you've been saying about journaling and things like that. If someone is battling with discipline, what is not an easy first step, but I mean, nothing will be easy along those lines, but what is maybe a slightly easier way to get into being more disciplined in a certain area?
Generally, the first thing to try and do is to try and merge what it is that you're looking to do with something that you naturally do well. So I might, for example, say to myself, okay, I lack discipline in doing quiet times. I lack discipline but where I am disciplined, for example, is I enjoy my running, and I'm pretty disciplined in getting on the road and doing my runs that I've scheduled for myself. So can I link an undisciplined practice with a disciplined practice? Well, in this case, yes, I can add it in. If you've read James Clear, Atomic Habits, he talks about habit pairing. So he'll speak about doing something that you know that you need to do with something that you generally want to do. And to use that analogy of running and praying and running and communing with God, I think some people might say, you can't run and pray, praying looks like this. And I think sometimes we've grown up with a picture of what discipline looks like and a picture of how we should be engaging the activity. And I don't think that's I think that's limiting to how we can connect and commune with God. Because if the ultimate aim is that we're actually connected and communing with him in the moment, when we're talking to people, when we're engaging with our work practices or whatever it might be, then why would something like praying and running not be able to be linked? So I think that's the first thing, is try and merge two things, that you've got an undisciplined practice in one and a disciplined practice in the other.
Sure.
Yeah.
I really like that, and it resonates with me very much. I've actually just started reading James Clear's book because I've heard so many amazing things about it. So I'm glad that you touched on that as well. And it's a whole new way of thinking of things, because like you say, I think a lot of the time we've also grown up with an idea of, and that can sometimes be our own detriment, because we're focusing on what it should look like or what we think it needs to look like instead of what works for us already. Like you're saying, you already have something that is disciplined. So combining the two, I think that's really practical. Thank you so much.
No,
Thanks for being open and vulnerable about sharing that as well. It's never nice to admit something that we feel weak in. So I appreciate it.
I think the helpful thing in that has always been really reframing the fact that God's looking for a relationship and it's a friendship.
Yeah.
And I think in the past where I got stuck with this is like, I have to do this because God expects it. And I need to toe the line. But when I realized, well, how do I interact with my normal friends? Well, now what does that mean for me being able to interact with God as a friend? Yeah. Can we go for a walk together? Can we talk while we are engaging in that, or do I need to be sitting in a certain posture, doing a certain thing? He doesn't expect that.
Yeah. I mean, we just have to go back to the Garden of Eden, and we see God walked with them and he conversed with them while walking around. Like that is the natural way of doing things. So while, over the years it's been halved up. So why would we not go back to that rhythm of being with God in a natural, casual way as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, I like it very much. Thank you. I would love to just know from you. I mean, you've said some really great nuggets along the way, but if there's something that you want to leave our listeners and viewers with today, if there's, like a little nugget or a takeaway, I'd love to just have this time now for you to share that with us.
So I think going back to that line, I use it quite regularly. It's you are made for tough terrain. So I really resonate with your series, and I don't think enough of us give ourselves credit for our ability to navigate exceptionally trying circumstances. Perhaps the one benefit of COVID, even though it was a very difficult time for many, was that it showed us that we have an inner strength that we can draw from to navigate something that was kind of forced upon us. For God to use us, for God to transform us, for God to really just deepen that connection. I love that. I love this deep cries out to deep, There's a depth to our souls and there's a depth to our lives that God has crafted and created. And I think that he really wants us to discover that depth. But in order for us to discover that depth, we've got to push out. We've got to push out the boat into the waters. We've got to push out outside of the comfort zone. We've got to push out into the areas that scare us most.
Yeah.
And, the reason why I became a Christian is because I saw that there was this man who was kind of walking around calling other people saying, let's go on this wild adventure, leave everything behind and let's go and change the world. And I thought, wow, there's something very wild and untamed and raw and, completely unknown, completely risky. And that was my connection with the faith. But then once you get into the faith, we tend to almost try and tame it down and turn it into a set of rituals and practices that aren't necessarily representative of that.
Yeah.
And so when we recognize that we're made for tough terrain, then we recognize that God's actually asking us to walk into some very difficult spaces. And if we can see that, then we can learn to embrace those and allow those to transform us. And as those transform us, they lay the foundation for us to be able to take on more, and they increase capacity and they increase confidence. If I go down to I don't really surf much anymore, but I remember going down to the beach and I see the waves are a little bit bigger than I can normally handle. And that the fear in me wants me to stay back, and then I say, okay, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go out, I'm going to paddle out, I'm going to take a wave. Being able to go and do that, it's not just about being more confident in the surf. That gives me confidence in other areas.
Yeah.
So what God's looking to do is to raise up your level of confidence, to raise up your capacity, to raise up the sense of connection that you've got in exceptionally trying circumstances, because he needs to use you in those spaces. And so it really starts with us recognizing I'm not made for ease. I'm not made for predictability. I'm not made for consistency even. I'm made for the wild, untamed, raw, tough terrain. and my God will meet me there and he'll lead me through it. And that's where fulfillment and satisfaction and joy starts to actually come back, because it's takes away the mundaneness that a lot of us have got into as we spin the hamster wheel here, you know?
Yep. Yeah, totally. And do you feel like self-talk plays a part in that? Because I know for me, you know, as I've been trying to journey in building myself up over the last couple of years, I've found that a lot of the time, if I'm speaking over myself, I can't do tough things, or I can't do this or that. I tend to listen to that dialogue, whereas when I'm owning it and I'm saying, like, for example, I can do tough terrain, you know, I find that my outlook shifts because of that internal dialogue. I don't know if you find that that's a thing.
It's a combination of two things. So one, self-talk, definitely. I'd say linked in with that is the talk of others. We grow up in an incredible feedback culture.
Yeah.
You know, my daughter was leaving for school today, and they were talking about the need to choose a captain. And I said to her, in a specific thing that she's involved with at school, I said to just understand that captaincy in this context is a bit of a popularity contest. I mean, what's going to happen is you're going to get in the room and you're going to vote for someone. Now, does that mean that that person is the best person for the job, or does it mean that they're the most popular? So one day when you get into that situation and you're not voted in, are you going to take that on board as, well, I'm not a leader, I'm not a captain? So we unfortunately live in a system that kind of skews the perspective that we have of ourselves because of the feedback that we receive. And so we've got to be intentional about raising up the next generation to believe that their worth comes from who they are in Christ and their identity. But we as adults have got to unlearn a lot of that in our own lives, which is exactly why we've got to go into the tough spaces, because that's where God deals with that stuff. And then, of course, it also then supports our ability to do what you've just said, is the self-talk starts to change. So catching ourselves in the moment and saying, well, I'm saying this about myself, where does it come from? You know, it probably comes from an upbringing, a feedback, something that you picked up, and it's a lie that's really just got ingrained. I mean, there's a whole topic in this. It's I have a discontent around how youngsters sometimes grow up in that kind of culture. Yeah,
it's very real. But, you know, I think the main takeaway for me from this chatting with you is the fact that we can do it. We are made to be in that space, you know, not to shy away from the tough terrains, not to shy away from where we're needing to develop, but to push into those spaces of development.
Yeah, and I think, you know, key to that is we can do it. But the reason why we can do it as believers is because God enables it. And when we recognize that he goes in and he actually gives us what we need to get through it, then it gives us the confidence to step out. If it was just about me and my abilities, okay, maybe I'll hang back. But yeah, we've got what it takes to get out there.
That's exactly it. We're equipped in the best way possible. Yeah, sure.
And it's incredibly powerful to feel confident in areas where other people don't feel comfortable. And when we get into that space, then we can support them to feel confident in those areas. And I think that's going back to community is what it's all about. How do I support you to get confident where you don't feel comfortable? Because I was once uncomfortable, but now I'm confident. And that shift, yes, it's such an attractive feeling to know I'm confident in a space that I used to be uncomfortable. It's an incredible feeling.
Which is where the journaling is a good thing as well, because then you can look back and be like, sure, look how much I was struggling in this area and how much I've grown since then. You know, journaling is a great way to look back and reflect as well. So
you're tracking your narrative.
Yeah.
And your community will point it out to you as well. You know, so remember that. Sometimes we just don't see stuff in ourselves that other people can see for us.
Exactly that. Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a great time in chatting. I'm sure we could chat a lot more. You know, they're big topics. Every single one of them, and we've combined all of them into one, but each topic is something big. And like you say, each one can also go down a different divergence as well. But I really appreciate the time that you've given to us for this time together in our podcast. Really appreciate your insights as well. You know, you really are pioneering in your field, and I know that you're passionate about growing this in people and in teams and in groups of people. So we're really grateful that you were able to impart that wisdom and impart that passion to us and our viewers and our listeners. as well today. Thank you, Trav.
Pleasure, man. Thanks again, and well done for all the great work you're all doing there, Grace.
Thank you. We do what we can.
Same.
Awesome. And thank you to everyone who tuned in as well. It's been so great to have you guys with us. We look forward to seeing you next time on our Grace podcast. Cheers, everyone.